Are you attached to your pet? Do you spend more time with your cat or your dog or your feathered or scaly friends than you do with other human beings? Have you replaced human companionship with that of a beloved pet? If so, you're not alone. But what you want to think about is that you are just as subject to the suffering that comes from attachment as you would be if you were hanging out with some of your human friends. Spoiler alert, I have a new book called Enlightenment Unleashed: How Your Pet Can Lead You to Spiritual Transformation. And today, I'd like to share with you an excerpt from that book. So thank you for joining me on this special in-between seasons episode of the Death Dhamma podcast. Hi, it's Margaret Maloney, and welcome to Season 3 of the Death Dhamma podcast. I'm so glad you're here, and I'm so appreciative that you are part of my community. And yet, I seek not to be attached to the idea of the podcast or even to the idea of our community. And that's our topic this season: attachment, clinging, and aversion. What happens when we really want something? What happens when we really don't want something? And what does it do to our suffering and dissatisfaction? Let's dive in and find out a little bit more with today's episode. One day, a member of the group I meditated with said to me, "You write and talk about when a friend or family member dies, but what about when we lose our pets?" She had recently lost a cat who had been with her for 19 years. This loss was deep and painful. I carried her question with me and contemplated how best to write about grieving our animal friends. Around the same time, another friend told me they thought it would be interesting if my next book was about the spiritual nature of our pets. And this too was a compelling idea. And I realized I didn't have anything really new to say about dealing with grief and death, because I realized that the loss of a pet to many of us is just as profound and deep and painful as the loss of a human friend or family member. And that led me to think about, well, why is that true? And what does that mean for us? And what are some thoughts around Buddhism and our relationships with our animals? And so from all of that came Enlightenment Unleashed. The difference between friends and pets is that friends we allow into our company, pets we allow into our solitude. And that's a quote by Robert Brault. And there's my pet. I don't know if you just heard him in the background, but he decided to meow. So we can welcome Willie to this. I would ordinarily edit him out, but since we're talking about pets and attachment, I guess I will leave him in. It's in that solitude where our true selves emerge. Our pets see and hear things that no others will know. There's no hidden agenda, no need for pretense. When we close the door, when we disconnect from others, we allow them to be part of our entire world. We develop bonds that are deeper and stronger than the bonds we have with some of our human family. We are attached to our pets. There's some data. I'll share a little bit of it with you, but I don't want to make this today all about data. And we're also going to connect this with some Buddhist teachings. So now in June 2023, Consumer Affairs conducted a survey, and that survey really showed how strongly millennials felt about their pets. A millennial is someone who was born between 1981 and 1996. 81% of millennials surveyed stated that they loved their pets more than at least one family member. Now you're wondering which family member, right? Who is less popular than a millennial's pet? So 57% said they loved their pet more than they loved their brothers and or sisters. 50% loved their pet more than they loved their mother. 41% said they loved their pet more than they loved their father. 31% loved their pet more than they loved their grandparents. 30% loves their pet more than they love their partners. And 12% loved their pet more than they loved their cousins. Now, you might not be a millennial, so you might be thinking that doesn't apply to you. But if you're a parent of a millennial and you're waiting for grandchildren, you might need to wait longer than you thought, or become comfortable with the idea of having a grandcat or granddog. Why? Because 50% of millennials would rather have pets than children. So what? Well, the so what is that in 2023, millennials made up the biggest segment of the population in the United States. And those of you who join me here regularly know that I am speaking to you from the United States. So that's the group that's driving that pet-based economy and culture, because we spend a lot of money on our pets. They're setting the trends for many things, and especially the overall relationship with pets in our society. Now, Gen Z, and you're Gen Z if you were born between 1997 and 2012, also following in the footsteps of the millennials. Another survey found that members of Gen Z would prioritize the needs of pets over their partners when considering where to live. So if you want your millennial or Gen Z children to live near you, then make sure you let them know that your neighborhood is very pet friendly, because 86% of them are not going to move without considering how it impacts their animal friend. Now, this isn't just millennials and Gen Z. As of 2023, 66% of U.S. households own a pet, and baby boomers accounted for 24% of the total. And many baby boomers and others acquired pets during the pandemic and other times. We do reach out to our animals for companionship. And when those relationships do not go as planned, or when it's time for them to end, we encounter the noble truth of suffering, right? We know from the first turning of the wheel that the Buddha started off with teaching the Four Noble Truths and the noble truth of suffering. This was not a practice session. So the Buddha's first teaching, he wasn't starting with some kind of throwaway lesson just to see who was listening. He had a profound experience, right? He woke up. He meditated under that tree, and he woke up and he saw how things really were, the truth of our existence, and he came out and he shared it with us. Okay, so let's fast forward. The Buddha taught for about 40 years, and then he died. He obtained nirvana and was no longer subject to rebirth. Why? Because he gained release from suffering. He didn't cling. He did not experience aversion. Consider his body of teaching, the thousands of lessons he taught, the thousands of lessons his monks taught. Why? What was the reason? To show us how to live in a way that we could also gain release from suffering. Consistently, the Buddha and his followers taught how to live good lives, do no harm, act with compassion, and develop equanimity. There are also some very deep teachings on dependent origination and form and consciousness. He didn't teach us so that we could sit on a cushion and develop psychic powers. He taught us so that we could transcend suffering. So the basics, such as the idea of the Four Noble Truths, they might be easy to comprehend, but that doesn't make them easy to carry out. The Buddha was a skillful teacher, and he knew this was difficult. So he presented it to us using, similes and helping us understand. He wanted us to engage in the practice. And it's attachment that makes the difference. Attachment makes it difficult for us to let go of our beloved pets. Attachment leads us to consider cloning, taxidermy, or look-alike plushies. And it is attachment that, per the second noble truth, causes us suffering. When someone you love dies, moves away, or cuts off contact from you, it hurts. You miss them. You miss the prospect of spending more time together. It's difficult to know that there will be no more walks, or scratching their ears, or playing fetch. Yes, I'm discussing when that someone is your animal friend. In the Buddha's time, relationships with animals were different than today. The teachings around loss of a loved one assumed the death of a human friend or family member. But if you're a millennial and you love your pet more than you love some of your family members, or no matter what age you are, if you love your pet more than you love some of your family members, your strongest attachment might be to a furry, feathered, or scaly critter. To elaborate on the truth of suffering, you control your own level of stress or dissatisfaction through clinging and aversion. This is not a statement of blame. It's an observation of what it means to be a human. It's like this. From the Samyutta Nikaya. Whatever stress in arising arose for me in the past, all of it had desire as its root, had desire as its cause, for desire is the cause of stress. And whatever stress in arising will arise for me in the future, all of it will have desire as the root, will have desire as its cause, for desire is the cause of stress. Having to face the impermanence of your pet, to know that you will probably outlive that pet, and to wish for a different outcome, that can be the truth of your suffering when it comes to the attachment that we have to our pets. And that's just a little bit, some thoughts from Enlightenment Unleashed, how your pet can lead you to spiritual transformation, which you can find on Amazon in both paperback and Kindle. Topics covered include Our Pets Are Our Family, some background on how we got to where we are today, Animals in Early Buddhism, talking about the Jataka tales, specifically the ones that use animals for teaching, Animal Rebirth, because just like us, our animals are subject to rebirth, animals appearing in suttas that are not the Jatakas but other teachings, animals in other Buddhist cultures, meaning outside of the West, Love Them and Let Them Go. This is the chapter where we do talk a little bit about death and burials and ways to memorialize our beloved pets. Animals to the Rescue, where we talk about the value of how animals really can help us in our lives. Your Responsibility. What should you be doing as a human and as a Buddhist to help your animals in their lives? More Pets, More Attachment, which I read a little bit from today. And wrapping up with Our Pets and Our Practice. I hope that you found this enjoyable, and I hope that you check out the full book, Kindle or paperback. I would love to hear from you, your thoughts, your suggestions, your own stories about attachment. So follow this link, I'm going to read it to you in a minute here, to leave me a 90-second message with your ideas and suggestions. You can go to https://www.speakpipe.com/death_Dhamma_podcast. I suppose you could also just use your favorite search engine to say SpeakPipe Death Dhamma Podcast. And there you can record an audio message for me. And be sure to come over to margaretmaloney.com. That's MargaretMeloni.com and join the community. You've been listening to the Death Dhamma Podcast with your host, Margaret Maloney. Thank you so much for being here. Come find me on margaretmaloney.com, MargaretMeloni.com. And until we meet again, may you be well, may you be happy, may you be at ease, and may you be free from suffering. Bye for now.